Easter dinner at my parents' house always smelled the same: roasted ham, buttered rolls, and the faint tension of unspoken things. I hadn't been home in nearly 3 years, but the moment I stepped inside, it was like time had folded back on itself. Same floral tablecloth, same mismatched chairs, same brother, Ryan, sitting at the head of the table like he owned the air everyone breathed. I dressed carefully, in a soft cream blouse that whispered class without shouting it. My heels clicked across the old wood floors, the sound sharper than I meant. Ryan's smirk greeted me before his words did. "Look who decided to show up," he drawled, carving his slice of ham with exaggerated precision. "Must be nice having so much free time when you don't have a real job." The laughter that followed, hesitant, polite, nervous, cut deeper than I expected. My mother shot me a look that said, "Please don't start," and my father just kept buttering his roll. I smiled tightly, taking my seat, pretending my pulse wasn't hammering in my throat. The wine glass felt cool against my fingertips as I lifted it. I wanted to say something sharp and clean that would put him in his place. But instead, I just smiled. Because tonight, I wasn't here to argue. I was here to end something. I was 16 the first time Ryan called me a failure. It was right after my school's spring showcase. I'd painted a mural that got selected for a local gallery. Mom had brought cupcakes. Dad had stood by the door, scrolling his phone. But Ryan just stared at my painting and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Cute. But, real artists actually make money." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. That night, I locked myself in my room, staring at the cheap poster I'd taped to my wall, a quote from my art teacher, Mrs. Ellison. "Creation isn't about approval, Sam. It's about courage." I remember whispering that line to myself over and over, like a prayer I wasn't sure I believed in yet. College was supposed to be my escape, but every time I came home, Ryan found a way to remind me that I was chasing hobbies, not a future. When I landed a small art internship, he called it playing adult. When I sold my first piece for $50, he laughed and said, "That's barely gas money." The final straw came 2 summers later. I'd told my parents I wanted to move to Chicago for an art residency, unpaid but prestigious. Ryan interrupted mid-sentence, chuckling, "So, basically, you're volunteering to stay broke."
Something in me snapped that day.
I remember standing up from the dinner table, my voice shaking but steady enough to slice through his smirk. "You don't have to understand what I'm doing, Ryan. You just have to remember you laughed first." Mom gasped. Dad said my name in that disappointed sigh way fathers do. But I didn't sit back down. I grabbed my sketchbook, my jacket, and my grandmother's silver locket, the one she'd given me the night before she died, whispering, "Don't let small minds measure your worth, sweetheart." That locket was all I took with me when I left home for good. I didn't know where I'd sleep or how I'd afford groceries. But I knew one thing: I would never again let someone like my brother define what real meant to me. Chicago was colder than I expected. Not just the weather, the whole city had this sharp edge to it, like it was constantly testing whether you really belonged. I arrived with 2 suitcases, $300, and a dream that everyone back home already decided would fail. The first apartment I could afford had peeling wallpaper and a radiator that clanged like a ghost in the pipes. I used my suitcase as a nightstand. My mornings started with cheap instant coffee and a cracked mirror reminding me that I was officially on my own. The art residency wasn't glamorous either. We painted in a warehouse that smelled like turpentine and rain. I worked long after everyone left, sleeping on paint-stained canvases, eating ramen, trying to stretch every dollar. But for the first time in my life, the struggle felt mine. It didn't feel like failure, it felt like becoming. One evening, while I was cleaning brushes, a woman stopped beside me, tall, poised, silver streak in her dark hair. "Your work," she said softly, "has something the others don't. It breathes." Her name was Clara Monroe, a renowned gallery owner who'd wandered in looking for new talent. She asked to see more of my pieces. I showed her everything, even the unfinished ones I'd been too shy to post online. She didn't laugh. She didn't compare me to anyone. She just smiled and said, "Let me teach you how to turn this into a living." Clara became the mentor I didn't know I needed. She taught me about pricing, framing, networking, all the invisible parts of art no one talks about. Under her wing, I started selling small prints, then full pieces. Within a year, I had my first solo showcase, a modest event in a brick-walled gallery that smelled like wine and hope. My parents never came. Ryan didn't even text. But Clara stood beside me, clinking her glass against mine. "To the girl who refused to shrink," she said. Those words carried me through every setback. Over the next few years, my career grew quietly. My pieces began appearing in online publications. Then, one day, a luxury hotel commissioned me to design their entire lobby mural. That job changed everything: my income, my confidence, my circle. Still, I never posted pictures of my success. My social media stayed simple: a sunset here, a coffee cup there. My family still assumed I was barely scraping by. And honestly, I preferred it that way. There was something delicious about building an empire in silence while the world, and Ryan, kept underestimating me. Every time I unlocked my new studio, sunlight spilling across walls filled with my work, I touched the silver locket around my neck. It had become my quiet reminder: don't let small minds measure your worth. I had done it, without applause, without permission. And as Easter drew closer that year, I found myself wondering what would happen if they finally saw who I'd become. The clinking of silverware was the only sound filling the dining room after Ryan's little joke about me not having a real job. The kind of silence that doesn't just hang, it echoes. I let it linger. I let every eye around that table flick between us, waiting for me to shrink like I used to. But I didn't. I dabbed the corner of my mouth with my napkin, glanced at him, and smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing something no one else does. "Still charming as ever, Ryan," I said softly. "How's work treating you these days? Still managing that dealership?" He leaned back, cocky as always. "Yeah, business is good. Real work, you know? Not painting feelings." The table chuckled again. I could feel my mother's tension vibrating through the china plates. She always hated conflict, even the kind I didn't start. I took a slow sip of wine, tasting the sweetness of the moment before the truth. "You're right," I said. "Not everyone can handle a real job." His smirk widened, until I added, calmly, "Some of us have to handle a real career." I set my glass down, sliding my phone from my purse. One tap, and the screen lit up with an image of a massive, ocean blue mural stretching across a luxury hotel lobby, my signature glinting in the corner. The haze grand. Mom's eyes widened. "Wait, haze? That's..." I nodded. "My latest commission." The hotel bought 6 of my pieces and named the entire art wing after me. "I was going to tell you, but, well, you always seemed so sure I couldn't handle anything real." Ryan's fork froze midair. That's your work?" "Every brushstroke," I said, smiling. "Clara Monroe, you might have heard of her, became my mentor. I've been curating shows for her gallery, and my latest collection sold out last month." Dad cleared his throat, suddenly interested in his water glass. Mom blinked fast, her lips parting but no words coming out. And Ryan, his face was priceless. Shock, then confusion, then the slow realization that every insult he'd ever thrown now sounded ridiculous in his own head. "You always thought I was just drifting," I said quietly, my voice steady now. "But while you were laughing at me, I was learning how to turn what I love into something bigger than any paycheck you've ever cashed." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, Ryan Hayes, the family's golden boy, had no words. I leaned forward slightly, my tone still gentle but laced with steel. "You said not everyone can handle a real job. You were right. Not everyone can handle real passion, real work, real independence." The room felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. Mom finally spoke, voice trembling. "Samantha, why didn't you tell us?" "Because," I said, meeting her eyes, "you wouldn't have believed me until someone else did." Silence again, not awkward this time, but heavy with truth. I could almost feel my grandmother's locket warm against my chest, like she was right there beside me. I stood up, smoothing my blouse, and looked around the table. Anyway, I said softly, "Thank you for dinner. I should go. I have an early meeting with the hotel board tomorrow. Something about a new partnership in New York." I picked up my coat. Ryan finally found his voice small now. "Sam, wait." I turned back, tilting my head. "What is it, Ryan?" He swallowed. "I didn't know. I mean, that's huge." I smiled faintly. "I know." And with that, I walked out, heels clicking against the tile, my own quiet applause echoing behind me. A week after that dinner, I got the call I knew would come. "Sam, honey, it's Mom." Her voice trembled between guilt and forced cheer. "We were just wondering if you'd like to come over this Sunday. Ryan feels terrible. He really does." I hesitated, twirling the locket between my fingers. For years, I'd begged for their approval. Now they were asking for mine. "Sure," I said simply. "I'll stop by." When I pulled up that weekend, Ryan's truck was already parked outside. My parents were waiting at the door, faces carefully composed, the kind of politeness that hides a storm. The living room was filled with the smell of cinnamon candles and awkwardness. Ryan stood when I walked in. For once, he didn't look smug. "Hey," he muttered. "About last week, I shouldn't have said that stuff. I don't know. Insecure?" I finished for him. He looked down. "Yeah, probably." I crossed my arms, studying him. The same brother who once made me feel small now looked like a boy still trying to understand what real strength meant. "I appreciate the apology," I said. "But things don't go back to how they were." Mom frowned. "Sam," he said, "he's sorry." "I know," I interrupted gently. "But forgiveness isn't the same as access." They stared at me, confused, maybe a little intimidated. For the first time, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it breathe. Then I said it, calmly, clearly. "If we're going to rebuild this family, we do it with honesty. That means no more jokes about anyone's dreams. No more putting each other down to feel taller. And we start by supporting each other's work, all of us." Ryan nodded slowly. "I can do that." "I hope so," I said. "Because I'm sponsoring a youth art program downtown, and I want you to help with logistics. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And if you're serious about changing, you'll show up." He blinked. "You want me to help you?" "I want you to learn what real work looks like," I replied, letting a small smile curve my lips. "The kind that builds instead of breaks." Mom's eyes softened. "Samantha, you've grown into such a strong woman." I met her gaze.
No, Mom.
I just stopped apologizing for being one. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was clean.
Honest.
A space finally ready for something new to grow. Before I left, I hugged my father, something we hadn't done in years. His voice cracked as he whispered, "We're proud of you, kiddo." "I know," I said, pulling back. "Just remember, pride means nothing if it doesn't come with respect." As I walked out the door, I felt lighter. Not because they'd changed overnight, but because I finally had. They could choose to meet me where I stood or stay where they were. Either way, I wasn't shrinking back again. Spring came early that year. The air felt softer, the city brighter, or maybe I was finally seeing it differently. 3 months after that dinner, the art program I'd started downtown opened its doors. Kids from every corner of the city walked in, paint on their sleeves and hope in their eyes. Ryan showed up, just like he'd promised. He didn't say much at first, just helped set up easels, passed out supplies, and quietly stayed late to clean. One afternoon, I caught him standing in front of a painting a 12-year-old girl had made. Bold colors, messy lines, raw emotion. He turned to me and said, almost to himself, "She's really good." "She is," I said. "She just needs someone to believe it before the world tells her she's not." He nodded slowly. That was the first time I realized he finally understood. My parents came to the program's first exhibition. Mom brought flowers, lilies, my grandmother's favorite. Dad took photos, smiling like he finally saw me for who I was, not who he'd expected me to be. After everyone left, I stood alone in the quiet studio, sunlight spilling through tall windows onto the wooden floor. I reached up and touched my grandmother's silver locket. For years, it had been a reminder of survival. Now it felt like a symbol of peace. Her voice echoed in my mind. "Don't let small minds measure your worth, sweetheart." I smiled. "I didn't, Grandma," I whispered. "I measured it myself." The city hummed outside, cars, laughter, life moving forward. I thought about that Easter night, about Ryan's smirk, and how different it all felt now. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I no longer needed to. I'd built a life that spoke louder than any argument ever could. A life made of color, courage, and quiet victories. Before locking up the studio, I turned off the lights, leaving only one spotlight shining on the mural at the center, a woman painted in sweeping strokes of gold and blue, standing tall with her head lifted to the sun. That piece was titled Real. Because in the end, Ryan had been right all along. Not everyone can handle a real one. I just became her.